Yeah. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Planning Board meeting Monday, July 8th. First of all, to welcome our new alternate member, Howard Maltz. Welcome, Howard. This meeting is being audio and video recorded. All votes will be conducted via roll call. Attendees via Zoom must use their real name for accurate minutes. The chair will recognize participants to speak. In-person participants and Zoom attendees, if you can keep it, I don't know what, skip that. Please mute yourself when you're not speaking. Members in attendance today, Joe Topham.
Present.
Nat Lowell.
Here.
Barry is not here. John Kitchener.
Here.
Great.
Okay.
Alternates, Stephen Welch. Abby DiMolina.
I'm here.
Howard Maltz.
Yes.
Staff members present, Leslie Snell.
Here.
Catherine Ancero.
Here.
And Billy Sod.
Here.
Great. All public comment will be limited to 3 minutes today, please. Thank you. I'd like to call this to order. Someone please make a motion.
Make a motion to approve the agenda. Second.
Okay, motion made by Nat, seconded by Joe. Nat.
Aye.
Joe.
Aye.
John.
Aye.
And I'm an aye as well. All righty. Anybody here for public comment? All righty then. No public comment. Did everyone have a chance to review the minutes?
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
Okay, entertain a motion, please.
Motion to approve as written. Second.
Motion made by Joe, seconded by Nat. Joe.
Aye.
Nat.
Aye.
John.
Aye.
And I'm an aye as well. On to second dwellings, garage apartments, and tertiaries. Is there anyone that needs to recuse from any of these?
Oh, Mr. Chair, you
Yeah.
skipped over a couple of things. We have some
Oh,
consultants
that's,
here.
I'm sorry, I'm looking
Yeah,
at the
we
wrong
have some
one.
people.
I apologize. First of all, we have subdivision rules and regulations update.
All right, so the subdivision rules and regulations that you all are currently using were last updated in 1999. So a lot has changed since then. The scale of the subdivisions that you're reviewing is a lot different. The materials that are used these days is a little bit different. Preferences have changed over time. Technology has changed over time. And it's well past time to update those. So we have a consultant, Patrick Brennan. He's a professional engineer, and he is going to do that update for you. You may recall approving his contract a couple of months ago. I'm not sure, how much progress he has made so far. I think just going through the document, gathering some background information. I've spoken with him several times. He has a very close working relationship with Ed Pesci, which is just coincidence, but that will probably be helpful. And he is here to hear from you, sort of the direction that you are thinking you want to go in, or some ideas, really just to get your input at this point.
Great. Thank you. You here?
He's here, he may need to be promoted.
I'm on Zoom.
Hey, welcome.
Thank you. As Leslie mentioned, my name is Pat Brennan. I have my own company, PGB Engineering. I currently consult for 15 or 16 towns, planning boards, zoning boards, conservation commissions, all pretty much in southeastern Massachusetts. I've been doing this for over 25 years. Actually, Judy Barrett, who I see on the panel as well, I've worked with her in a couple of communities. And so far what I've done is, as Leslie mentioned, I've talked with her a few times, made some notes on some of the things to start thinking about. I've read through your regulations, and I'm currently compiling a list of questions that I would have that I will, send through Leslie to the board to ask you questions on some of the regulations. I'll make some suggestions on how to update some of them for, stormwater management and things that have changed over the years. But like Leslie mentioned, mostly I'm interested to see if any of the board members have anything in particular that you're looking to either update or revise. And obviously, I don't expect any answers tonight, but if it's something that the board members could potentially put together and get over to me so that I can take a look at it and see how we can incorporate those into your rules and regulations.
Great, thank you, Patrick. Any board members, questions, input?
Yeah, I got a couple. Thank you, Patrick. Did we meet him before? Or is this,
This is your introduction.
'cause I've missed one meeting,
No.
so I don't remember this. Okay.
No.
I know, but I don't remember him, that's why I'm asking. Patrick, so here's a simple little list of things, like, we never had the real lot subdivision. When did we put that in? Like 6 years ago? 5?
Maybe 5 years ago.
Yeah.
Ish.
So what I'd like to look at is the controversial stuff that we get questioned about from time to time with frontage on a road that is not improved, but is never needed to be improved, and the property owners in the area don't want it improved, but yet that's where the frontage is coming from versus an alternative access. We have a lot of oddball properties here that, typical improvements are not what people really want. They want it to just sort of look the same. And that's where the real lot subdivision helped us so much in the last 5 years, where you don't have to have roads that are untaxed and ugly. But at the same time, do other communities have these issues like that? And the other one is the 4181L. Do you have communities that have historic properties pre-55 that you're representing that have a lot of, situations where there was two structures on the site that can be proven?
Yes, I see that. I see that quite a bit. I also see the residential lot of record issue comes up a lot in some of the communities where the lot was laid out on a subdivision plan prior to current zoning, but they're grandfathered to only abide by the zoning that was in place at that particular time. So it is, those are things that I see quite a bit, those types of issues. The rear lot issue, I haven't had any experience with myself, obviously, because I'm actually doing a lot of work with Ed Pesci now in one of my communities, and I'll be discussing that with him. I've also asked Leslie if she can forward, some of your recent decisions so I can take a look through those and see basically what, Leslie's been telling me that there's some of the regulations are being waived almost on every single subdivision that comes in. So those are the regulations that we really want to key in on so you don't have to issue those waivers anymore. We actually just revise the regulations to be more in line with what you're actually approving.
Lighting, kooky stuff. Yeah, all right, so, what's his name? Paul? Patrick. All right, Patrick, sorry. This is like, this is all coming out of my head, so I just, I'm just giving you some thoughts and everybody else can chime in. The waiver stuff, though, this is another issue, okay? When someone hears us give waivers, the waivers, nobody wants them. Nobody wants that stuff required because we'll look like the mainland. So there's a lot of confusion when an applicant asks for a waiver, but it's actually something that we wouldn't want to be happening in a 1 lot or 2 lot subdivision, right? Like lights and the width of the road and all that. We had the rural road alternative issue, Leslie, which we did quite some time ago. That was like in the mid 2000s, where we have a 20-foot layout instead of a 40 for reasons there's many reasons why that was the case. So I just, since you're working with Ed knows what's going on over here. We used to approve 500 lots a year in the 80s. And now it's way, way less than that. And it gets tricky now. And that's why I think if we could hone in on some of the things that get flagged as controversial, that the planning board is, making more land and doing, giving waivers and doing things illegally and all kinds of stuff that gets said about us. It would be nice to kind of clean up some of the ways that subdivisions can occur without it being controversial, where other communities are doing this, and it can be more formalized. That would be my first shot at this process that we're going to take on.
Yep, that's understood.
Okay, that's it for me.
No, Nat just captured the 20-foot wide, we have Low Place that is 20-foot wide. And so there's some of that history that is there that we need to maintain. And so that's why I think it's really important to kind of go back to what are some of these rules and regs that we've crafted and designed for our own needs and what is specific for Nantucket.
Yep,
So
great.
I'm sure Arthur Reed has got something. I can see him stewing up there.
More than just something, I'm sure. John,
No, thank you.
good for now? Okay, how about alternate? Any concerns or?
I'm sure you're going to want to do this. This is just coming out of my...
Yeah. So Patrick, what your hope is that we will put some of these thoughts and ideas in writing and forward them to you?
Yeah, that would be great. It'd be a good help to let me know exactly where I should be really focusing.
Okay, great.
And one thing that I talked with them about, which Nat touched on, is moving away from the waiver situation and crafting the subdivision rules and regs to be more in line with your current practices. And again, the scale of what you're approving now doesn't really match sort of the scale of the infrastructure improvements that are contemplated in the current document.
Yep.
And
And
we've
those are
talked about
sidewalks, road widths.
maybe developing some standards for the rear lot subdivision, because those aren't roads, they're driveways, and they probably need a little more focus. And then maybe going to like town and country overlay district with some town standards and some country standards. So aside from the redlined version of the document that needs a lot of updates,
A great idea.
it's a larger scale.
We doing public comment on this?
It's your discretion.
Hi, thanks
Hi.
for recognizing me.
Yep.
Hillary Hedges, Rayport. Mr. Brennan, I just wanted to add on, I was very appreciative that Mr. Lowell brought up about the 4181L subdivision. So I generally come from a perspective of historic preservation, and we have a lot of properties in our old historic district and elsewhere as well, where there was an outbuilding. It's a small lot, but there was an outbuilding, there was a workshop, a tool shed, a chicken coop, something like that. And several years back, there was a definition change made at a town meeting to the bylaw, which said that any lots created under the 4181L exemption were buildable on Nantucket, which means that they can divide the lot, which you can do anywhere, but on Nantucket, you don't have to go to the ZBA. If you created a non-conforming lot with a structure, you don't have to go to the ZBA. And so we're seeing these outbuildings, which I think everyone would agree we want to maintain because the outbuildings are part of the character here. But they get demolished, or the back lot gets developed. There's a situation on Main Street now where it's less than 11-foot wide access, and the back lot's getting developed. So that I just wanted to add a little bit of cover, because it's a color to that, because it's a specific issue that I've had a lot of concern about. And I think the community, as measured by the 2023 town meeting, has a lot of concern about. Is that something, are you seeing other definition changes where these lots are buildable by right? And there's nothing the planning board could do about it, just because there was a garage or a chicken coop or something, and it's just by definition buildable?
Not really. I really haven't seen that.
Great, thank you. John, did I see your hand up?
Yeah. Yes, Mr. Chair, I'm sorry to come back late, but and I'm not sure this is the right place anyway, but is there anything about the wetland regulation changes that happened last week. Is there anything about that that should find its way into here or not?
I think everyone needs to keep in their lanes when it comes to that, is the best answer I have, unless,
Yeah, I think we should leave the wetlands to the Conservation Commission.
yeah.
Okay.
And if
Thank
I
you.
could just follow up on Ms. Rayport's comment, I mean, 4181L with, dividing a lot into 2 or more lots with structures that predate the adoption of the subdivision control law, which we all know here was 1955. That's a state law. That's not something that the planning board has developed on their own. So that's allowed. What was added to our zoning bylaw was a provision for those lots to be effectively grandfathered. So it wasn't a definition change, it was a pretty substantial change to zoning to keep people from having to come to the planning board and then go to the zoning board to get a variance. So if that's something that people want to revisit, we can do that. But through the subdivision rules and regulations update, that's not the right place.
Great. All right, I think that's it. Patrick, I appreciate the update. Good to meet you, and look forward to working more with you in the future.
Thank you, likewise.
Thank you. Miss Judy Barrett, long time no see. Judy's here for a master plan update.
Happy to see all of you again. I don't have a whole lot to report, but what I have to report is important. And if you don't mind, I think I'm just going to share my screen. It would probably be a little bit easier to go through this. Yes, is that it? There we go. I have to tell you that 81L discussion just sent shivers up my back. I happen to live in a town where that has been an ongoing issue. So I sympathize with why it may be an issue in Nantucket. Anyway, this is an update on where we are. And just for people who may not have been, part of the discussion in April, I want to just make sure everybody understands kind of what we're doing, what the scope is that we've been approved to do and are funded to do. Talk about kind of what we've done so far, which has informed kind of our thinking about what the components of the plan should be, what our thoughts are about community participation, and then take any questions that the board may have. So, this is what we were asked to do, was to update the master plan based on existing available data. So there's not a lot of new research in this, although some of that is inescapable. But it's really to sort of go back to that plan and bring us up to the present, because the plan is pretty old at this point. Its baseline is certainly out of date. And of course, it doesn't reflect all the planning work and research work and so forth that has been done since 2009. I mean, there have been zoning changes, there's been new planning work, and none of that would be reflected in that old plan. So I'll talk about kind of how we've approached that in a minute. But the other thing too is that we're trying to get everything into one document. So I think one of the challenges of the old plan is that it relies a lot on sort of other documents that are referred to in an appendix, but you really want a master plan that people can kind of open up and say, this is the plan, this is where everything is. So we're trying to decide on what the best format is for that, so that there is a unified document. And then again, updating all the baselines, as I said, to the extent that the data are available to do that. So what we've done so far, it's been kind of a mammoth effort, because there really has been a lot of planning work, a lot of studies, a lot of regulatory changes and so forth. So one of my planners here has gone through a pretty exhaustive effort to catalog everything we could find, both including things that Leslie and others in the Plus department had already given us. But, also we just kind of went online and checked all the department's websites for information that we didn't already have. So we could try to get one complete catalog of what's been done, when was it done, who did it, and then kind of why. And then to understand what each of these projects was intended to do. Are there conflicts between them? That's taken a fair amount of just very close reading time to figure out do these plans all end up in a harmonious place? And, like any other town, I think, the answer is no. It doesn't always work out that way. Well, how much has the town been able to do to implement these plans? What's still relevant and where are the holes and what's missing, which really is kind of the heart of, so what wasn't there before that really needs to be done today in order to have a modern plan for the town, given all the changes that have taken place since that last plan, and in some cases even before that plan was done. So where we are with this, in our scope of work for the project, we do have a list of kind of standard master plan elements. The ones that you see on the left side of this slide are the ones that are required by state law, Chapter 41, Section 81D. This is kind of what the planning board kind of must include. We think there's a need to have some additional ones, some of which we alluded to in the last meeting with you, but there really needs to be an updated demographic profile. Sometimes that sort of gets done on a scattered basis and other master plan elements. I think there needs to be a unified picture of who is Nantucket today. Land use often touches on this, but not as much as I would like, and that is the character of the built environment. Kind of getting a little bit to one of the comments that Hillary just made. You have different features of your built environment, but together they come together and they inform what that town looks like to people walking, bicycling, driving. What is that built fabric? And I think that deserves some special attention, in addition to just a traditional land use element, which looks at how is your land used, what are your zoning policies, and so forth. There obviously has to be an element devoted to sustainability. That, of course, is going to need to build on the sustainability work you've already been done. We're just not budgeted to do sort of new work on that, but it ought to be brought into this plan, both what's been done and what the recommendations were of your existing sustainability work, so that gets embodied in the master plan. Also a community health element, and then kind of a look at just the status of the area plans that the Planning and Economic Development Commission did, kind of where do those stand? So that's how we're envisioning this document coming together, and I'm happy to take input from the planning board, but this is our thinking just based on what we've seen. We are planning community consultation. It's not it's not that we don't have the resources or the funding rather to do a lot of engagement, but we have to do some. And we know that we actually love to do engagements. So we're not trying to put it off. We're doing a site visit in a couple of weeks, myself and some of my staff. At that point, I'm planning on making sure that everybody has just a tour of the town. I mean, for all the years I've worked with Nantucket, I have not seen every inch of that island. So we all need to be able to see that. And also talk to the staff in the planning department. If there's time, and Leslie, I haven't hit you with this yet, so if this is coming out of the blue, please forgive, but if it's a possibility to talk to any of the other town department heads while we're there, that would be great. We are planning to do interviews with people. I guess you would call them stakeholders. I really don't like that term because I think everybody who lives in a community does have a stake in what it is and what's important to them. But I'm going to kind of have to lean a lot on Leslie's department and you folks for suggestions about, who do we really sort of most need to reach at this point, this still barely early point in the planning process. We typically do interviews in small groups, typically with 5 or 6 people. These are going to be mainly remote. We're committed to do at least one day in person. Because sometimes people just warm better to an in-person interview than one that's remote. Ideally, those interviews should be set up under some type of affinity group basis so that people who are joining a 45-minute interview with a consultant know that they're going to get to talk about the things that really matter to them. So if you're going to have an interview with folks who are particularly concerned about the quality of the island's natural resources, you would want to have those folks together. If there are people who want to talk about housing, they're together. And that's really for us to get information. So we're going to have an interview protocol to go through with folks, whether it's remote or in person, it's going to be the same protocol we want to sort of tease out questions that we have about the status of some of the plans that have been done by various officials and boards and committees and so forth in Nantucket, and get a sense of like what people's kind of key concerns are. So that's all going to be sort of an August, September timeline. We would like to suggest, and this is really entirely up to you folks, that some thought be given to creating a logo for the master plan. I mean, obviously it is an official document of the town, but I think the master plan ought to have some sort of recognizable identity, if you will. And many communities do this to sort of have a logo that perhaps draws from aspects of the town that really matter to people. So whenever people hear about anything about the master plan, whether it's a web page on the town website or any other materials, printed materials, that logo is always on them, and people know, oh, this is about the Nantucket master plan, 2025. So I'll talk about that a little bit more in a minute, but we'd like to be able to do that if it's all right with the board for us to proceed. We are committed to creating an interactive online platform. One option is what's called an ArcGIS story map, where there's information about the plan, information about the town, the physical characteristics of the town, the infrastructure and open space and so forth, with some questions that people can respond to, or at least be able to get information about the plan. We have been using lately a platform called Social Pinpoint to engage people in planning projects. And frankly, I like it even better than the story map. But we need to have some way for people to be able to respond to perhaps short survey questions or to get information about where things stand with the master plan. Social Pinpoint's a great way to do that. We have that license. We're using it in other projects. But I think you're going to want something where people can engage with us. Obviously, we monitor those sites. We don't want people to be intimidated about participating or whatever. So it is monitored. But we have found it very helpful to sort of keep people abreast of a project. Say when there's a big gap between community meetings or people aren't hearing much, the Social Pinpoint site, keeps them abreast of what's actually taking place. We are committed to doing 2 community-wide meetings. What we had said in our scope for Leslie was, probably one would be in person, one would be remote. I haven't plugged those into a particular calendar yet, but we certainly need to make sure that one of them happens pretty soon, probably sometime maybe late September. And then a little bit later in the process, when we have a sense of kind of what the actions are, the sort of next steps for the town to be thinking about going forward from this master plan process, we'd like to be able to get back to some of those original affinity groups and run some ideas by them. Here are some thoughts that we have about implementation. Here's what we think the hurdles are. Here's what we think the resources are. Here's what we think the intended outcome would be. What do you folks who know a lot about this topic think about this? And I don't know how many of you have actually done sort of true focus groups, but it's typically to be able to elicit feedback from folks who know a fair amount about a topic, so that when you put something in an implementation plan, you kind of have a sense of, is this going to fly? Is this something the town can do? Or if it's a hard stretch, what resources would the town need in order to be able to take on some of these actions? So that's sort of the plan, if you will, for the consultation process. It's really the interviews, the later focus groups, the 2 master plan engagement efforts, and then the Social Pinpoint platform. But I would also say that logo can have lasting effect. When we worked with the town of Tisbury on their first ever master plan over the last 18 months or so, that logo became really a critical piece of communicating with the community. And the person who developed what happened to be a graphic artist who was on the master plan committee. But when we've done it in other communities, we've typically gone to the high school to talk with perhaps the chair of the art department and engage kids in thinking about, what are the sort of iconography of their town? What are the images that people think about when they say Nantucket? And how can we wrap that into a logo? The other thing we've been thinking about doing, we had a lot of success with this on another project, is this concept of a 6-word story. And we would typically work with a library or the school department or probably senior center, or really any group. The concept is that people are asked to say something important about their town, and they have 6 words to do it. And the information that comes out of those very short pieces is really, it's very moving. It's a lot more direct in some ways than people might go on in a meeting for a while about something, but in 6 words, they kind of have to really get the succinct point across. And you learn so much about what's in people's heads from that engagement activity. So it's not on this slide, but it's something we've all been thinking about and would be more than happy to work on with some of your community partners. That's kind of where we are. Is we've got this sort of implementation framework kind of in place. We're really ready to start asking questions and meet people. And I think at this point we feel kind of ready to do that. I would not have wanted to try to do that a month ago. So I'm happy to take any questions that the board might have.
Great, thank you, Judy. Board
problem.
members. John Kitchener.
Hi, Judy.
Hi.
Yeah, it's taking me back to short-term rental workgroup days.
Yeah, good to see you again.
Yeah, you too. I know it's early, but do you have a like a real high-level timeline that you could share with us when this thing?
Oh God. So when I met with the board in April, I had high hopes of saying this is going to be done by December. It's not. It's just taking. We've spent really almost the entire time since then going through all these documents and trying to catalog them. And it isn't just like getting the documents and reading them. You have to code them. So just coding for understanding the related content and where there are differences has just taken a lot of time. And I don't have any other explanation. I'm thinking probably early spring.
Well, that's pretty
Yeah.
good.
Well, the thing is, I mean, some of these planning processes take 18 months, but they're budgeted very differently than this one, John. So I'm trying to figure out how to make this work the best I can within the resources that we have available. So I think this plan, maybe more than some others, may have some kind of high level recommendations that, if you had more time, you might try to work some of them out in this process, but probably can't. But that probably is a overly general statement. But I think we are trying to make the resources we have work the best way we can.
Thank you, Judy. Mr. Chair, may I have a follow-up question?
Go ahead, John.
Yeah. And if you can't answer this at this point, Judy, that's fine. But as far as local area plans go, when would they have to be, the version that you're going to use, when would that have to be complete by for any of the villages?
So we're not actually updating or doing them. What we're saying is there were these area plans that were done and have been done even since the last plan under the aegis of the Planning and Economic Development Commission. And I think it's important for us to not lose sight of the fact that those exist and they're area specific, and kind of what is the status of implementing them. That was really the intent, was to look at what's been done, because that was clearly, I think, part of their charge or their interest, and those plans exist, but we don't know where they all stand. So it would be important to look at those while we're working on this master plan. If there's a need for updating them or integrating them better in some way with other planning documents, I would think we would want to do that as part of this effort.
Thank you so much, Judy. That's great. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Nat?
I'll just make a quick comment. I don't want to drag this on, but Judy, it's a lot of information. So one of the things that I wanted to ask through Dave to Leslie, back to you, is how many zoning districts have we created since, I think, R10 limited, R5 limited, and the workforce housing bylaw? Well, I know that's not a zoning district, but that was 2015.
A lot of the districts were created and contemplated in the master plan, but not mapped at that time. So I'm not sure how many new ones. I could look at that. But
The
I don't know off the
limited
top of my
one
head.
at Mizzen Mast was where that started, Rhine Valley. But I'm just thinking about things that we've done that, since the first master plan, because she brought up some stuff about that. And the other thing, Judy, and I know you're familiar with Nantucket, is there's a lot of plans around here. Okay?
I know.
Lots of plans.
Right.
And it kind of gets sort of satirical a little bit. People think that there's like one big plan and who's got this plan, and it's really kind of hard to follow. And we have the sewer and water, they have a plan. We have the strategic plan with the select board, which has some components in it that are kind of part of this a little bit.
Yep.
We have the harbor plan, and also the build-out analysis, which I want to focus on a little bit. This is going to be, when we finally start talking about this is going to be a huge conversation, because the lack of knowledge of buildable land versus infill is very evident here. People don't understand ground cover. They don't know that stuff intricately, and that is where this conversation is going to be sort of like, it's going to really put, the public will know where we are now, how much land is left, where the building is occurring, which is really on existing lots that already have development, because most of it is being done. And that is going to be a huge conversation that is all going to focus around us, one way or the other. Whether it's planning commission or planning board, it's going to focus around us. So I just want you to be sort of have all that in your toolbox, in your mind, because that's where the conversation is going to be. Because it's going to be an amazing conversation to have once we actually have it. And then the other one is the building height issue that we had an article at town meeting that we tabled or took no action on, rather. And we're having some conversations a little bit about that. That is a conversation that we have to have. We should have had this 20 years ago. And this 30 feet issue and what it creates for buildings to be sort of not practical in certain areas and certain uses. So anyway, that's my little thing for this conversation right now. So I appreciate everything you're doing, and I'm glad it's you, because you know what you're talking about.
Is the height issue the height itself or where it's measured from?
Oh, that's for somebody smarter than me. It is so complicated. You just don't stick a tape measure down from the top of your roof to the ground. I know that much.
When you find the Shelecki rule, you'll understand what we're talking about. It's all four sides, all taken in and then a mean degree. So, yeah, we can go into more of that. But can I ask a question, Ms.
Of
Barrett?
course.
Ms. Barrett-Chotop, so one of the things you were talking about is coding. And I was wondering, is a way, and we want this document to be a live document and being updated every couple of years, or information shared with your group. But one of the things I was wondering, is there a way to start a coding or a nomenclature now that as the plus department starts to file something, that something is prepared and in that category, you know, the town Dewey Decimal System or something like that, you know, just something that would help.
Well, that's an interesting question.
To reformalize this. And I think if you're sitting there trying to create the coding, is there some way to say going forward, is there some system that we could have in place that would help the next document, you know, be streamlined and put together a little bit smoother, if that's possible?
That is a really cool question. And you know, no one has ever asked me that.
Okay.
But I can see why you're asking it, because there really has been a lot of plans and studies. I mean, Leslie gave us a lot of stuff when we first started. But you know, like you start going on all these other websites for the town departments and boards and commissions, and you just find this stuff. It's been really kind of remarkable. So it is disjointed. And I think that's part of what maybe makes the last master plan a little bit difficult to work with, is that it relies so heavily on a series of appendices. Actually, the Northampton plan is very similar, and we're right now working on trying to update that for them, because things are just kind of all over the place. But we could certainly put thought into that. It's a really good question.
Yeah, I just think it would make your life a little easier, or going forward, you know, say one of our planning members are not here or someone from staff moves on, but there's a system in place and it gets filed, hopefully in the right folder, and just some way that, you know, as you come into, like, say, the Nantucket area plan, you know, we've just set up, I think, 8 or 9 different folders. So all those categories we've broken out, and that will all be shared with the town. But I think that's important to have that first broken out, and how that nomenclature works and how it gets back and then shared with everyone, I think is super important. And that way, if anyone moves on or whatever, there's an outline that, you know, if you have the minutes, you can not know exactly what happened in the meeting, but you should have a pretty good understanding of like, oh, I read about this, but here we're going to get more in depth. And I think that's really would be important for us to kind of establish now while we're going through this.
So that does make a lot of sense to me. I mean, the person who's really been getting into the weeds with all these plans has this massive Excel sheet. I mean, it's remarkable, because part of what we wanted to do was be able to find quickly where there was overlap or, you know, related things that might not be obvious to people. So we've almost sort of started down this path a little bit without calling it what you're calling it. But yeah, I think that's a perfectly reasonable request. I mean, it stands to reason to me that a town like Nantucket would simply do more planning, assessment, research, policy setting than a lot of other communities, because it isn't like you have somebody next door that you can, you know, like other towns. It isn't like you have somebody next door that you can just sort of rely on to take care of some problem or another. You've got it all.
Yeah, and I think the other thing we're trying to do with the town of Nantucket is have the ZBA, the planning board, you know, ACC, all get in the room together. And what, you know, John brought up something earlier is, should we be looking at the Concom regulations? How does that affect us? But there's some of that where we have to maybe not cross lines, but how do we touch? You know, how is that so everything kind of works? And when I was on the Concom, there was an application for a project, and we didn't want this surface being paved, but then that went back to the ZBA and they wanted that type of surface. So it was this
Right.
back and forth for 4 meetings. And so that's when we said, all right, let's everyone sit down together, you know, from the Concom perspective, and sit down and see if we can't get everyone streamlined together somewhat, but know that you have your own guardrails and where you need to stand. So I think if any way we can help, that would be useful.
That kind of discussion is really good. And sometimes boards, because everybody's busy, they don't always have a chance to talk to each other. Talking through staff is not the same as talking together. We did a meeting kind of like what you're talking about for the town of Dedham, 2009. And that was like probably one of the most amazing meetings I've ever done. I had a script. I knew what questions I was going to ask, and we were so organized, right? And about 3 or 4 minutes into the meeting, someone asked a question that was completely off script. And I realized I have to just put these questions down because this group really knows what they need to talk about. It was just a remarkable meeting. So, you know, that should probably be part of this process, because you do have, I think, you know, unwittingly, perhaps some competing policy priorities that people ought to at least understand why they won't always agree, why those policies may sometimes collide. Some of it's jurisdictional.
Great. Thank you.
No problem.
Any other board members? Nobody online? Judy, could you share your slide deck with staff so they could distribute it to the members, please?
I certainly will do that. Yes.
Okay, great. Welcome back, Hillary.
Thanks,
Yeah.
Mr. Chair. Thanks for recognizing me. Hi, Judy, Hillary.
Hi.
Again. Hi. So I had a quick question. I attended a training session on master plans that was given by, I think it was Alexis from your organization.
Yep.
And she was great. She did a great job. We talked all about master plans, updating master plans. And she mentioned that the first step is settling on a vision, a community vision. And this has been my great hope for this planning process. And I wondered, given that this is a little bit of an unconventional, it's more of an update and more constrained in terms of opportunities for community. You know, nobody's issued me a stakeholder card, so I appreciated your comment that everyone is a stakeholder. I don't know, I really don't know how much input I'm going to have in this process. I think probably not very much, but we need to get together with a community vision. And I do think that with all the plans, the shared community vision is something that's missing for Nantucket and that could really, really help people because it's a very divided community. So if I may ask a question, if the chair would allow it, how will this plan include getting to an updated community vision that this board signs off on? Thank you.
Do you want me to address that?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead, Judy.
Okay, so modern practice in any kind of community planning is a vision and goals. The statute's a little broader than that, and it really focuses on goals. However, goals that are developed through an interactive public process. I think that we certainly, in that first community meeting that I talked about, Hillary, would want to sort of get at what is in people's hearts about the town. I don't know how far, frankly, we're going to get. I'm just being very honest with you. I know it's a divided community. As you know, I've worked there off and on for various reasons for several years. I don't know how far we're going to get on a vision, but I can tell you this, there have to be goals. There's no approvable master plan without goals. And sometimes the goals themselves kind of lift up what that vision should be. But it certainly is going to be a discussion point at that meeting. I mean, we're not going to duck it. I just don't know how far we can go with it. It may come down to one of the towns we worked in a few years back, another place that was pretty contentious, ended up having kind of a subcommittee take all the content that had come out of a couple of community meetings and really try to work out sort of a consensus position on a vision, because we just weren't scoped to do all that, but we had the content from the meetings. So you were able to kind of say, if you ask people what they think Nantucket's strengths and weaknesses are, all these things kind of ended up on the strengths column. These things ended up on the weakness side. And guess what? There's this group in the middle where people think, that something is a weakness to some as a strength to others. And I think it really involved kind of a local group to try to work that out. So I'm not dodging your question. It's just the best answer I can give you at this point.
Great. Thank you, Judy. Anyone else? All right, great. Thank you, as always, Judy.
No problem. Do you need me for anything else today, Mr. Chair?
I don't believe so. No.
All right.
Great.
Maybe we'll see you when we're in town in a couple of weeks.
That would be great. I look forward
All
to
right.
it. All right.
All right.
Good night,
Take
Judy.
care, folks. Bye-bye.
All righty.
Minutes.
We did the minutes, correct or no?
Can we do that?
No, okay. All right.
Yeah, I'll make a motion to approve June 10th.
Second.
Motion made by Nat, seconded by Joe. Nat,
Aye.
Joe,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
and I'm an aye as well. Okay, back to where we left off. No recusals on second dwellings, garage, or tertiaries.
Yes, sir.
All right, I would entertain a motion for, I guess I should read them off. Second dwellings, John and Susan McDonough, 5 Movie Way, 12 Derrymore Road, Trust, Dukes Road, Trust, Stephen Cohen, trustee, 2 Dukes Road, 156 Cliff Road, nominee trust, 156 Cliff Road, Island Cricket LLC, 169 Pulpus Road, 106 Squam Road LLC, 106 Squam Road, Jonathan J. Damachek, 77 Vestal Street, Wolfram Family Trust, 7 Folger Lane, Summer Sidecar 66 LLC at 66 Mile Common Ave. Those are the second dwellings. For garage apartments, we have Jason and Amy Davidson at 21 Clifton Street and JFM KQ LLC at 36 Easton. Tertiaries, we have 106 Squam Road LLC, 106 Squam Road. Entertain a motion, please.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion made by Joe, seconded by Nat. Joe,
Aye.
Nat,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
and I'm an aye as well. Okay, on to A&Rs. No recusals there, correct? Okay, we have Joshua Adam Leffler and Margaret Mary Leffler at 22 Pleasant Street. We have Joseph R. Mata Jr. at 38 Cliff Road, Charles A. Ernst III, Realty Trust at 166 Cliff Road, Unmatched Properties LLC, Lawrence M. Maury, manager, 13R Wintergreen Evergreen Way, and Richard A. Valero and Gail Valero at 1 Evergreen Way.
Mr. Chair, I just noticed an error on your agenda. The Valero at 1 Evergreen, that's actually owned by Nantucket Safe Harbor for Animals Incorporated.
Okay. I thought I saw their name on the application, but, okay, so Safe Harbor Animals at 1 Evergreen Way. Entertain a motion?
Motion to approve endorse all of those mentioned.
Second.
Motion made by Nat, seconded by Joe. Nat?
Aye.
Joe?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
And I'm an aye as well. Great. Under previous plans, 33 Old South Road.
This is the one on Young's Way, right? Yes. So I thought, just checking.
So yeah, this is. Or that's not where it's at. Leslie, you want to tell us about this? I can't get my,
I will defer to Billy. He wrote your staff report.
okay, Billy.
So the applicant is requesting the release of 3 of the building lots and the roadway lot. The original decision outlined that those lots would be released upon the endorsement of the plan and the legal documents. So the applicant has submitted the legal documents and the Form J.
Great. So questions from the board? Entertain a motion.
Motion to endorse.
Second.
Second.
I'm going to give that to Nat. Motion made by Joe, seconded by Nat. Joe?
Aye.
Nat?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
And I'm an aye as well. Thank you. Okay, we're on to Maple Lane subdivision. Applicant's requesting a final lot in the Maple Lane subdivision, a release of the final lot in your packet. Applicant is current escrow balance. Mr. Pecci has confirmed it is an adequate amount for the surety of the remaining work. Is that accurate?
Yeah, there's been a lot of back and forth between Megan, the applicant here, and Ed Pesci, and he's confirmed that they have a sufficient amount to act as a surety in this
Great.
instance.
Board members, questions?
Make a motion to release that lot.
Final lot, yep. Great. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, motion made by Nat, seconded by John. Nat?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Joe?
Aye.
And I'm an aye as well. Okay, we are on to public hearings. We need to vote to continue on these?
Yeah.
Okay, so why don't we
Just the
take,
continuing ones
yeah,
first.
so why don't we
Okay.
take Great Harbor Yacht Club and GJ Smith, Inc., and I'd entertain a motion to continue, yes.
And 17 Canterbury.
Oh,
It
I'm
was a
sorry, and 17 Canterbury.
Are we continuing that?
Yes, we are.
Okay.
We're waiting for
Okay,
for them
okay.
to hear from the HOA.
Okay.
Before we
All right.
delve in. So,
I'll make that motion to continue the Great Harbor one, the Smith one, and the 17 Canterbury.
perfect.
Second.
Motion made by Nat, seconded by Joe. Nat?
Aye.
Joe?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
And I'm an aye as well. Then we have 12 Darrymore Trust, Darrymore Road, which is requesting withdrawal without prejudice.
Make that motion.
I'll second.
Made by Nat, seconded by Joe. Nat?
Aye.
Joe?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
And I'm an aye as well. On to Square Rigger Road LLC, Florian Gashi, 7 Square Rigger Road. Billy?
I'm moving Dan Malloy over right now.
Okay, great. Hey, Dan, welcome.
Good afternoon. Sorry I couldn't be there in person tonight. So if everyone remembers this application from the last meeting, there was a lot of question on the density, on the neighborhood and parking. And at the time, we continued the meeting so the board members could, if time's available, have a chance to go out there and at least do a drive-through or take a look at the property. So there wasn't any specific questions or need for more information, I think, at the time. It was more of, let's go take a look at it and get everybody's opinion. So I think now I'm just looking to hear what board members think, and that will dictate which direction we go.
Okay, I'm sure you have lots of opinions in here.
Turned on. Sorry.
Nat?
Yeah, I might as well just go first. I just went over there, and now I see what the confusion is, staff and stuff. You know, unfortunately, this area is getting sort of cleaned up and very slowly cleaned up, and one at a time, like a lot of other areas are. They were built out and now they're being rebuilt out, kind of. And I think, you know, when you look at it and you say, okay, there's plenty of parking, but it's not all part of one property, it's all connected together. So people are using different, sort of like parking at the chicken box for the Stop and Shop, but whose land is that, right? No one thinks about it, they just walk across the street. And that's kind of what's happening here. You can see it. I think that I think it could work, but if it doesn't work, then it's a problem. But yet, is it even working now, the way it is? I mean, there has to be some kind of agreement between the property owners. Sort of like Kitty Murtaugh's did 20 years after it was built, across the street. Now they park next door, right? Like there has to be something more formalized for this to be approved, in my opinion. I mean, this is reminding me of that little thing that we had the issue with on Celtic Drive last year, where there's like this spot that has plenty of parking, but there needs to be an agreement to make this parking with the neighbor, or else it's not gonna work. And that's just what's happening here. There's a lot of turnover during the day versus night. Like I bet you there's different vehicles there at night than there is in the day. So that was my observation today. And, you know, it's just, when you have something like this getting redone, you have to have a more formal plan. You can't just say, well, we're just gonna park over here. That doesn't fly anymore. It used to, but not now. So that's my thought, Joe. Mr. Chairman, sorry.
I'll switch seats anytime.
Maybe
Thank you,
maybe I was
Nat.
the one getting lectured.
Anybody else? John, I know you went over for a visit.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I actually went twice just to see if anything was different the second time, and it wasn't. So I won't reiterate everything Nat said, but I do completely agree with what Nat said. And so, yeah, it would be difficult to vote for this at this point. Thank you.
Great, thank you, John. Joe?
Mr. Joe? Yeah, I agree with everything that's been said. I don't want him to be blamed for what's going on in the neighborhood or this square rigger, but I feel like this is our opportunity to kind of say stop. Like, we need this to be cleaned up. We need this to be organized. And, you know, I know he's asking for a waiver for a third apartment, and I can't get past what, you know, I saw in there. So I just would like to see if some way this neighborhood can come together and see if they can work together. There's just abandoned cars, or cars that look like they're abandoned in the middle of the road kind of thing, and it just looks bad. So I think if there's some way that he can kind of bring everyone together, it seems like there's a couple of shops that are working well together, Santos, et cetera. I think if some other people can get involved, I'd be more amenable to this, but right now I'm just having a hard time getting over that. So, thank you.
Thank you, Joe, yeah.
And the last thing we want to say no to is housing. You know, regardless of whether it's employee housing or not.
I agree with you.
It's just this is something, reminding me a little bit of some of the things that happened over on Pine Tree and Mary Ann. a few years back. It's similar stuff where you have something that's existing, it's sort of kind of happened in a different era. And there was never any on-street parking plan, there was never any, nobody thought about those things then,
Yeah.
in the 80s. And now we're getting, new applications for old properties that, and we need to find a way to get everyone, like, we don't have homeowners associations then. There's a lot of stuff that we don't have that we do now.
Well, it's like Bernie Bartley used to say, I'm sick and tired of seeing brake lights, I want to see headlights.
Yeah.
So I think of this case, we could kind of get in front of it, that this is our opportunity to do that.
I mean, I had storage in that neighborhood for, gosh, probably close to 10 years. And I can tell you, and that was 10 years ago, that nothing has changed in that neighborhood. And it's unfortunate, but it's the way it is. I don't think by us waiving this and giving him a third dwelling, that it's going to improve the situation there. And so I just don't see how we can get there. For me personally, get there to give him a waiver to get that third dwelling unit. I just, I don't think it's going to help improve the area. So that's kind of where I'm at. Does that give you where we're at?
I think that answers all the questions I had. So I think before I get to the final punch of it all is I can at least tell you, well, I guess first off, I'll formally request that we withdraw the application without prejudice. And with that, I will tell you that there is plans on cleaning the place up. There's a sewer line construction main planned for the fall that will help clean up the street and force some of these issues to be resolved in terms of parking and cars everywhere. And then that'll give him the chance to get things cleaned up and come back possibly at a future date to revisit the duplex.
Yeah,
Fair enough.
yep, okay.
So,
So do we, okay. Was that a
hold
motion?
on, wait a second.
Oh,
Yeah.
oh, sorry, go ahead.
Hello, Campbell, welcome.
Hi. Am I on? I am. Okay, great. Good afternoon. So I was interested to hear everyone's thinking on this, but so 2 units are by right, correct? So the parking plan that we had seen did not, in my mind, seem to create a safe and viable parking situation. I think they had 9 parking spaces or something. And so I had wondered what that would look like if you were only doing the 2 by right, like what would that parking situation look like? And otherwise, I just supported the staff's recommendation on this, as well as the chairs. So thank you.
Great, thank you. The idea is this is going to be withdrawn without prejudice, and they're going to come back to us at a later date when it's cleaned up, and then we'll tackle that. Motion?
Motion to accept the withdrawal?
Without prejudice.
Second.
Great. Motion made by Nat, seconded by Joe. Nat? Joe?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
And I'm an aye as well. Great, thank
I
you.
thank
Nat.
you for your time.
Thank you. Okay, next is Vanilla Day LLC, 2C and 2D Sanford Boat Building. Hera is here. Do you want to, give me 1 second. Hera brings the big guns. Billy, do you want to just give us a quick lowdown here? I think we all know, but they want to just extend hours,
Yeah,
correct?
they're looking to extend their hours of operation. They currently close at 1 a.m. They're looking to go an hour later and close at 2 a.m. I didn't have a whole lot to go off with the, review on this, so I had reached out to Amy Baxter and I provided her email in your packet.
Great. Perfect. Thank you. Linda?
For the record, Linda Williams representing the applicants. Mr. and Mrs. Mahajan are here also. They're the owners of the boathouse, which I'm sure all of you have eaten in. And what they'd like to do is extend their hour from 1 o'clock to 2 o'clock. They have a couple of previous modifications. that went to 11, then 1 o'clock, and now we're asking for 2 o'clock. I included in the packet previous decisions, including the ones affecting these particular units, 3 and 4. You did allow the hen house, not this particular board, but I think Nat was on it then, this particular board to allow the hen house, which is now Island Kitchen, to open till 2 o'clock for the same findings that you used when these owners came in and went to 1 o'clock. It's pedestrian friendly. It's allowing an existing year-round establishment to stay open later and service the people in Midtown, so they're not going downtown. Amy Baxter has been in favor of it. It doesn't impact any residences, unlike the hen house when that was granted. There are no residences except the people in the cemetery across the street. And they have plenty of parking, and the other businesses that are in that same complex, the Sea Grill, et cetera, are all closed at this hour. And it will leave some of the congestion down on the quote-unquote strip in Mid-Island. And now with the Sparks Avenue project, which I'm also involved with, adding all those units, it's going to be even more important to create a pedestrian-friendly area where people don't have to drive if they need something to eat after 1 o'clock, and it services the bar areas and people coming out of town. So the other conditions that are in the previous decisions are still in full force and effect, and this would be the only change to 2 o'clock. And I think that's pretty much it. The findings are pretty consistent throughout all the permits, whether it's previous permits for them or the previous permit for the hen house. And I think that's pretty good. They don't have any outside seating after 11 o'clock. That's in the previous decision. They don't have any open windows or doors because it's all air-conditioned and enclosed. And we think it'll be an insignificant impact, but it will be a greater impact economically for their family, as well as the people that live in Mid-Island. And the Mid-Island is basically the year-round population's downtown. And they wouldn't have to travel downtown to get something to eat after 1 o'clock. So we thought it would be a great idea for this. And thank you very much. If you need any other questions, he's here to answer them. But otherwise, I think it's pretty self-explanatory in the packet.
I agree, very straightforward. Thank you. Board members?
First and foremost, I thank Amy Baxter for reaching out, because I thought that was very nice for her, and the letter was great. So they are great stewards of the neighborhood. They take very good care of it. They are do a very good job, hardworking. They are a local family, and so I'd really like to support them. I think they do a fantastic job, so I'm happy they're here.
100%. Nat? Agreed. John?
Agreed.
Agreed, great. Let's open this up to the public, see if there's any comments from the public.
They're waiting to eat.
Yeah, they are. I would entertain a motion.
Motion to close the public comment first.
Yep. Motion made by Joe, seconded by Nat. Joe?
Aye.
Nat? John?
Aye.
And I'm an aye as well. On to the merits.
Motion to approve as submitted.
Second.
I'm going to give that one to John, all right? Motion made by Joe, seconded by John. Joe?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Nat? And I'm an aye as well.
Thank you very much.
See you at
And
1:59.
it'll be there for you. Come on by at after 1 o'clock.
I can't stay awake that late. Okay. On to 13 and 15 Nancy Ann Lane, LLC, 13 and 15 Nancy Ann Lane. Arthur Reed.
Thank you very much. This fine new lectern has been provided for my benefit, I see.
I think it needs to be raised about a foot for you.
I'm here together with Don Bracken, representing this project, 13 and 15 Nancy Ann Lane. This is a proposed mixed-use building on a lot containing about 49,000 square feet. Actually, it's two lots, which we're going to be using together as a single parcel. And what we propose is that the first floor of the building will contain 10 contractor shops. The second floor of the building would contain 12 apartments, and the basement would be used as long-term vehicle storage. In connection with that, we are applying for a number of special permits. And to run through those, first of all, obviously, this constitutes an MCD. So we're applying for the major commercial development special permit. Apartments in excess of 4, under the bylaw, 4 apartments are permitted per lot. Now, a maximum of 4. Now, this property is capable of being subdivided on an A&R basis with no waivers whatsoever. It has more than enough area and frontage to be divided into 4 lots. And those lots would each contain in excess of 12,000 square feet. In this CTEC district, the number of apartments that's permitted is 1 per 4,000 square feet. So the result would be that we're allowed to have on each of the 4 lots, if we did them as 4 lots, 3 apartments. So for the 4 lots, that's a total of 12, and you have the ability to grant the special permit to allow that where it's shown by the submission of a plan that the property can be subdivided, it has been subdivided or can be subdivided as a matter of right into the number of lots that would allow compliance with that provision. We're applying for 2 driveway access points. Now, there are 2 lots, and we're showing 1 driveway coming in on each lot, but once again, they'll be merged. So we're treating this as a single lot, and therefore 2 driveway accesses. We're contemplating and would be interested in input from the board as to whether that would be 1-way or 2-way traffic. It may be that the northerly of those would be the entrance and the southerly would be the exit. Again, that's not cast in stone at this point, and that's something we're looking at. And again, I know we're not going to be winding this hearing up at tonight's meeting. We're obviously interested in input from the board members and anybody else that has any thoughts on that. And but in any event, we do want to have the 2 entrance exits, driveways on the property. We are actually providing just over 20% open space, but I threw in an application for a waiver of the open space requirement of 20%, just in case, as a result of any tweaks that the project goes through during the process of its approval by the board, that if we wound up, as a result of that, changing it in some way so that we went just under 20, that we wouldn't have to re-advertise for a new public hearing. And likewise, as to parking, we're providing a number of parking spaces in excess of the number that's needed. And that doesn't count, by the way. We're not utilizing the long-term parking in the basement as parking that's required for the uses on the site. Parking is provided as exterior parking, as you see on the plan, generally around the perimeter of the lot. And that will satisfy the parking requirement. But once again, if as a result of some tweaks to the application, since we're close on it, if we wound up needing a small waiver of parking, I threw it into the application just in case. We applied for commercial washing of motorized vehicles in public wellhead recharge overlay district. We're not providing a public car wash. What we're providing is the ability to wash on site in the basement the vehicles that are being stored in the basement for the convenience of the people who are storing the vehicles there. And Don will go into what we would be doing by way of protection as far as that's concerned, considering the fact that we are in the wellhead protection district. And finally, with regard to the storage of cars, we're asking for a relief under the provisions in the use chart for storage as a principal use, which is a special permit in the CTEC district. Ancillary storage is permitted, but the long-term storage parking of cars would constitute storage, and therefore comes under the provision requiring a special permit for so-called storage and warehousing. In addition to special permit relief, obviously, we're requesting site plan review. We've seen the report that Ed Pesci came in with over the weekend, and don't see any problems with complying with and satisfying all of the things that he referred to in there. Don will address engineering issues and how those will be handled. There are a number of items relating to the site plan that are in the area of landscaping, the need for screening, the need for some plantings to be adjusted in order to handle the driveway entrances and the sight lines and so on. All those will be addressed in the landscape plan, which we haven't submitted yet and expect to be able to submit it well ahead of the next planning board meeting, because we will be asking for continuance until the August meeting. There was a reference in Ed's report to tandem parking, and I don't know where he's coming from on that because I don't see any tandem parking on the plan. But with that, I would ask Dawn to step up and discuss the engineering issues relating to the project, and then obviously both of us can answer any questions. We have, I believe, online for the meeting, Tim Mackey of Core Development and Timothy Boxface of Pearl Construction, who will be potentially able to answer any other questions that the board might have that perhaps Don or I couldn't. But with that, I'd like to turn it over to Don.
Great. Thank you, Arthur. Welcome, Don.
Thank you, Don Bracken from Bracken Engineering. I'll just quickly go through some of Ed Pesci's comments that we feel can be easily addressed by the next meeting. One of the comments was about the fire department. We have submitted a plan showing the fire equipment being able to traverse adequately around the site and through the site. We have been working with the sewer department on what the final sewer connection is going to be. Right now, there are two different alternatives, one going north and one going south. That's to be finalized. In order to finalize that, we still need to come up with a final plan for the car washing system that's going to be in the basement, as Arthur mentioned. That will either be in a contained system to be pumped off, or we'll tie that into the sewer system after some pre-treatment that will meet the requirements of the sewer department, something we'll have to work out with them. The building will have floor drains because they are contractors' bays, so that plumbing will be separated and properly treated before it goes into the town system. That will go into the town system. The sewage flows for the site, right now, we figure they're like probably 3,500 gallons a day, roughly in that area. Some of that will depend again on the car wash and how we dispose of that. The drainage system, because it's in a zone 2, has been designed to meet the stormwater management requirements. Typical of what we usually do, deep sump catch basins into what we call a diverter, that some of the runoff goes into a treatment tank and for the lower flows and gets treated and then discharged into the infiltration system. All the runoff on site will be infiltrated on site. Roof runoff will go directly into those infiltration systems. It'll all be paved with curbing. As Arthur said again, that landscaping plan is still being developed, and that will include the lighting plan when that's done. During construction, we show sort of pre-construction erosion control plan. There are 2 existing paved driveways there now that we're going to utilize during construction and add construction entrances to the end of those paved areas. We'll be constructing a temporary retention basin at the low point in the back left-hand corner to make sure that no runoff leaves the site during construction. With that, I'd be happy to answer any engineering questions.
Questions? It's a lot. Yeah, and Arthur, I know that staff contacted you, and I'm a little worried about running parallel tracks here with the HDC and for us to get too deep into this before the HDC makes their final determination. Does that?
Obviously, we've got to get approval from both you and the HDC.
Yes.
Obviously, there's going to be a certain amount of going back and forth between the boards as far as that's concerned. And I think it's actually most productive to have that going on parallel tracks so that we can come back from one board to another. Obviously, the HDC had a lot of concerns at the last meeting, as has been reported. And we obviously will be looking at that and determining, what we'll do in response by way of changes to the project. Obviously, the intention here is to build exactly what we said we were going to in terms of the uses of the site. And certainly there will be some changes that will be made to those at the HDC level, as there may well be changes at the planning board level. But the intention is definitely to go forward with the intended use of the contractor's shops on the first floor, the apartments on the second floor, and the vehicle storage in the basement, all of which I think are needs that are being addressed, community-wide needs that we're addressing by this project. I think that it goes without saying that the provision of the apartments, which will be granted where they'll be located above contractor shops, this is not going to be a refuge for rich Texans. And we anticipate that this is effectively going to be workforce, year-round housing. We would ask that you expressly prohibit short-term rentals. It isn't a suitable location for it. They shouldn't be in a place like this. But they will be, I would suspect, in many cases, the contract, this is intended to be a condominium project, and the contractors will be buying the units that they would be using as their shops. And I wouldn't be a bit surprised if some of them bought one or more of the units in order to house their employees or conceivably themselves. We also are in some conversation, although nothing has been worked out finally yet, with Affordable Housing Trust with regard to some of the units. So I think, once again, we're fulfilling a community-wide need in terms of the uses that we're proposing on the site. As I said, I know we're going to be making changes, some of them dictated by both boards, some as we respond ourselves to seeing other factors that come up. But I think that, once again, having go back and forth, there's no point in going all the way with one board, getting your relief, and then having to go through the other board and come back with a completely different project. It makes much more sense to have the two both be open at the same time so that we can be making changes on both as we go through.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I'm not gonna, I agree in some points. I just don't, I mean, let's use Sparks Ave as a, as a point. They're gonna have to come back to us after we spent a great deal of time on that project.
Yeah.
And after the HDC review, I think it's gonna be a completely different project. So I think that we can discuss uses and things like that. I don't even want to contemplate waivers until we see what the final project's gonna look like.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So I guess if we're in agreement there, then great.
Certainly.
Board members?
Oh, and this is just part of redeveloping what is there. I mean,
Yeah.
ideas, and, I'm thinking about the 30 acres application. Was that wasn't underground, that was all floor level. I believe it was. Yeah, I think it was. I would have remembered if it was below grade somehow. I think I would have remembered that. But, that's a big need here. I talk about the vehicles are already parked on Nantucket. They're not coming on the boat anymore. They're already here. And that's the need, that's a need. It sounds ridiculous to think that, but there's a big market for that. So if you can figure that out, God bless you. A lot of sand will come out of there. We need sand, so.
Yeah, I mean, for me, for what we have as far as purview here, I mean,
Yeah.
my concerns are all with stuff that we don't have a purview over. So,
Yeah.
you know, with the uses, I can wrap my head around all the uses. I think that we need to be careful that it, you know, we do need housing, but it's not housing at any cost. So I think we have to be thoughtful about it. But I think the uses are pretty straightforward. I think that the amount of apartments is logical. You know, if we break it down, that's what the bylaw's there for. So I'm good with that. With the real meat and potatoes, as far as open space, parking, stormwater, we still need to hear from the water department, that all that stuff is really gonna be hard to make decisions on without seeing the final picture coming out of the HDC.
Yeah, as I say, we should have all of that stuff before the next meeting with the landscape plan and all those other items that you mentioned.
Great.
And maybe it's not appropriate, but maybe like a management plan, because like, you're
think
gonna
there
have
was-
different people
wasn't
here.
there one?
Is there one in there? Did I miss it? I missed it.
Is there a
I did.
management plan in here, right? Oh,
Yeah,
it's okay.
Yeah, just because
Oh,
there's
it's just
so
for
many
the
units,
compliance, yeah.
just how, if something happens, how something, would be rectified. That's just something I was kind of jumping on first.
I agree.
I didn't want to get too deep into it. And like, I definitely think the HCC's got to have their review of this, but it kind of goes back to something we've been talking about, was Article 38 with the zoning building bylaw. And I think, if we need to kind of get that rolling, because we got Sparks Ave, we got this coming up. And I understand that's got a matrix of residential, and this is more of a commercial metrics. And I just think that we need to, as a board, planning board, work with Val and the HCC and kind of get that moving so that we can kind of, it's the perfect thing where someone says, you can build 10,000 square feet and you go 30 feet, and it's kind of, that's what this building is. I think and I understand the program, I like what he's trying to do. I think the concept is great. But I think that we kind of really need to, based on these last two projects, get that moving quickly and ready for town meeting. So, but yeah, right now, I don't have too much to really complain about.
Arthur, can I just, so is the apartments will be condoed, correct?
Yes, as with
The shops will be, and then how does that work with the storage parking downstairs?
I'm told that can be handled by being condoed too. We can sell the parking spaces as parking space condos.
Okay, so I guess that's all kind of paperwork we'll be seeing.
It's the same project, whether it's
Yeah,
a
no,
condo
no,
or
I
otherwise.
get it, but that's the management plan
That's-
kind of
that's-
feeds
that's
into
the
that,
plan,
right?
As I understand it
Okay.
from my clients. By the way, we obviously would be fencing the property for security. I mean, obviously, the contractor shops, the occupants of those would certainly want to have security in connection with making sure that their supplies and equipment stay there.
For sure.
And another thing, as I think Nat started to refer to, is you have to take a little bit of a look at the traditional use of the site.
Yeah, that's what I was just
Let's
going to
stay
say,
away
but I didn't
from
want
that.
to bring it up. So I'm glad you're bringing it up.
I think anything that we do
Could
is
do
going
an
to be a vast
existing site
improvement
report.
over what's been there.
I mean, I was actually thinking of something to ask that. I've never asked this question. What does it look like now versus like a hair club for men commercial, like before and after?
Hey.
Yeah.
Hey, what,
Well, I didn't think of that. But like this is the next phase of a part of this area that hasn't been redone yet.
Yeah.
And I think that's important. People say a lot of negative things about that area. And it'd be nice to have something positive, like Joe asked about a landscape plan and some other, or, management plan. And I think what it's gonna look like is important. Regardless, whatever comes out of the HGC, it's still gonna be the same thing. It's gonna look a lot better than it is now,
Absolutely.
so.
I think,
Yeah, I
John,
mean, the whole area, I mean, you compare what it
mean,
was before Richmond came.
How long did we
and
think
what
it was
is-
gonna take
What
for
it
the 20
is
years?
now, where they've been able to do things, and then,
Yeah.
other places like this, which was purchased from Richmond, just cleaning up the whole situation as it historically existed.
Yeah.
John Kitchener?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, and this is kind of a new boy comment, I guess, but I did go out there and sat and watched it for a while around the area, and I guess it's probably out of our purview, but I was wondering about the traffic impact around there with so many vehicles coming in and going. So it's probably outside of our purview, but anyway, it was one of the things that was on my mind. Thank you.
I think there's a letter in the packet from Mike Burns.
Yeah.
Yes, and
I
you guys,
passed that along to my clients. I
Okay.
don't think Don or I've had a chance to talk to them about that yet, but
okay, great,
we'll.
It's on the radar.
We'll respond to that one way or another.
perfect.
Just to clarify, I received that letter this afternoon, so it wasn't in the packet. I forwarded
okay.
it to the
All right.
board.
Great.
And just to remind the board, a traffic impact report is something that's a requirement for the MCDs, and it's something that you routinely waive because there aren't a lot of large-scale ones like this.
Yep.
So talking about that is certainly within your purview.
Okay, great.
But don't forget, there's vehicles coming to that site now that will be doing something else, or there'll be, how many vehicles are gonna come to it?
Not sure
when it's
that many
redone?
vehicles are going to that site.
And well, I mean, there's somebody's traveling.
They go there to
something.
die, but they.
Well,
they don't leave.
one part of it looks like it's pretty active, but, and then you have the connectivity that's gonna happen with Lovers as well, so,
Yeah.
you know,
So,
anyway.
All right, let's, anyone from the public?
There is a hand online raised.
Oh, there is, okay. I don't, well, these guys are up here, we'll go back to them. Yeah. Campbell, welcome back.
Thank you. Campbell Sutton again. I just wanted to speak to this. I caught the little blurb, I think, in Daybreak Nantucket this morning. But I get the idea of the general thing, so I just wanted to give some input on the general thing, not specifics, right? So I think I have a little bit of a problem with the car washing underground. It just seems to bring it that much closer, even if it's in a pond or filtered area. You know, you're still going down towards the wellhead district, and so I find that a little disturbing. The other one is with these, I noticed that there's a waiver for the open space. And my feeling is that if you're going to have housing for 12 units, 2 and 3 bedrooms, right, that people need green space. You've heard me say this before. People need to be able to go outside. They need to be able to sit down somewhere and not just be an industrial site, even if they're working in that area. So there was a courtyard, which, you know, may end up being in existence in some other fashion, but it doesn't really show how that's going to be used or how that type of open space could be used by the residents on the second floor. So on another point with the parking and waiving of the parking, I'm a little concerned that just one parking space per contractor shop is realistic. Where I live, there's a contractor shop on the corner, and it was recently purchased, and they have 4 vans that park there every night for one shop of similar size to what we're talking about. And the previous owner had like a cabinet making kind of a shop, woodworking shop, and they had 3 vehicles with a 4th for the upstairs apartment. So again, it's the island, and we always need more parking for people than our regulations require. And so I'd be reluctant to see you waive the 46 spots that he's offering. When you have a 3-bedroom, that's 3 cars, that may work. And I think in order, and we had this issue on Amelia Drive with Granite, up by Granite City Electric there, where there should be designation between residential parking and the contractor's shop so that people don't get blocked in or have difficulty or whatever. There should be something going with that. And I did like the idea of the one-way in and one-way out. Just seems to be a good way to control flow, especially if there's issues around traffic. That just helps with that. And I think that's all I had for right now.
Great.
So thank you for your time.
Just a note on the car wash, and I appreciate your concern, but every car wash on this island is in the Wellhead Recharge District. And they either recycle the water or they treat it before it goes into the sewer. So it's not perfect, but it's a system that we use and works.
Right,
So-
those are all above ground.
Yeah, but what's the
I'm
difference
just
if we
saying-
pre-treat everything
I'm-
below the ground? Yeah.
I'm
yeah.
just expressing my concern
no, and
for
we hear
that
you, and we hear you.
situation.
Yeah.
Okay,
it's in the
so
code
I
book
get
as
where all the other car washes are and using eco-friendly, ingredients and all of that. So,
And if it goes forward, it will be held to the same standard as all the
Correct.
rest of them.
Correct. Expectation, yes.
Great, thank you. Emily, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Emily Molden for the Nantucket Land and Water Council. A few comments and concerns that I also wanted to raise. Certainly, we appreciate that as currently proposed, the 20% open space is being provided for, and hope that throughout the hearing process, that will be able to be maintained. I think in addition to the concerns raised by Campbell previously for just providing the green space, but in a lot of this size, creating this much new impervious surface within the public wellhead recharge, it's also important to maintain some of that natural infiltration capacity for the lots. Also, with the amount of impervious surface being added, I certainly appreciate that this is being continued to the next month's hearing. So it sounds like the town's engineer, Ed Pesci, has provided some comments, and I'll be able to review those and look at those in advance. And then I did actually also want to raise the car wash and just some additional questions and concerns. I wasn't entirely clear from the plans that have been provided so far where that was going to be taking place. And I know that our existing car washes are within the Wellhead Recharge District. It is now certainly a known source of PFAs and PFOs as well. So I think it's more important for us to pay attention to how that wash water is managed and treated. We're certainly not a fan of permitting more car washes within the wellhead recharge area. I know that some of the more extensive investigations that the Airport Commission has done around the airport has shown from some of their monitoring wells that there is groundwater within this contribution zone to the public wellhead that is already contaminated with PFAs. And so it will be important to just monitor that, because conditions, drought and water usage in the future will determine if and how quickly that moves. So I think that it's really critical, and I would request that as additional information comes into the board, that there be some real specific targeted information about the car wash. I understand it won't be public, but even if it's private, just as far as where it will be located and exactly how it will be treated. I appreciate hearing from Mr. Bracken that he's working closely with David and the sewer department on what the plans are for that, but it would be very helpful to be able to see that more specifically before the next hearing as well. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Emily. Who do we have online, Billy?
We have Ann Cuspa.
Hi, Ann, welcome.
Hello.
Hi.
Ann Cuspa here. Housing Nantucket, thank you very much for hearing me. I was just taking a look at the MCD bylaw, and as you all know, because you've been helping me look at this stuff too, there is a requirement for, or at least it's a may requirement of the planning board, that you could require applicants to provide inclusionary housing in accordance with the following standards. And This is 139-11H. Number 1 says 1 inclusionary unit for each 4,000 feet of gross floor area of interior commercial use, or 1 inclusionary unit per major commercial development, whichever is greater. And it goes on. So just wanted to encourage you to re-look at that section of the bylaw. And I understood from the Mr. Reed that the intent was to provide year-round housing and no short-term rentals there. So I know I am not an expert on this stuff, and this is where I'm looking to you, planning board members. But what I could see, the definition of an inclusionary unit was a rental dwelling unit required pursuant to the 139-11H for employee occupancy, restricted to that. So this seemed to be a home ownership situation, and I know that there were some bonus dwellings that were asked for. So, I don't know how this could get applied, but maybe a condominium covenant could get assigned to any condo units that were sold, just to make sure that these were housing that actually would get used for year-round use through the means of a deed restriction. So I know that this will be a longer process, but those were some ideas that I had about how we could use what is already in the code to create new affordable housing. So thank you.
Great, thank you, Ann. I think that the applicant is in the talks with the Affordable Housing Trust at the moment for some units, so I think that, I don't think your idea is bad, but I think that I think we need to work out the affordable piece and understand it before we can even approach the subject, would be my guess.
It's all part of the puzzle.
Yeah, part of the puzzle, so I appreciate it, Ann, and we will definitely take it under advisement.
By the way, with regard to some of the other comments, I just want to assure you that we're going to do everything necessary to comply as far as the requirements as to the car wash. We certainly, and again, this is not going to be used to anything like the extent that the existing car washes on the island are. This is just in connection with the cars that are being stored on the site. And, but meanwhile, we'll be providing all the necessary bells and whistles to make sure that there's no contamination. And I would also stress that with regard to both the open space and parking, as the project now sits, we're not required to obtain any waivers with regard to those. I simply put those in the application in case, through tweaks to the project as we're going through both you and the HDC, that if we wind up being slightly short, we've got it in the application rather than having to re-advertise it, and any discrepancy would be very small.
Great. Perfect, thank you. Anyone else online or board members?
I got kind of a fluffy question that just popped into my head earlier. So Arthur, I know that these have been parceled out. This 49,000 square foot lot has been sold just like it's somewhere else, right?
Yeah.
But we still have Richmond. Like, no one sees this as separate ownership in that kind of way. They see it as the Richmond project. Like, that's how it's looked at. And we had, back when it all started, and there was common area discussions and places where people can go, kind of congregate, whatever. And I'm thinking about what was said about green space and places where people can sit. Is there any, I don't know what's going to happen with the rest of the property. I'm just thinking of like places where there's going to be a lot of people around here. You know what I mean? I'm just thinking outside the box as far as like a vision of this little area, what's going to happen to the other land around it in the future? That's what I'm thinking.
And I don't have an answer to
I
that
don't-
because my clients
either.
don't
I'm
own it.
just asking, you
My
know?
clients bought their land from Richmond. They're
Yeah.
not part of Richmond.
Right.
Yeah.
And so accordingly, we can only
It's
deal
almost
with
like a
what we've
master,
got.
a Richmond master plan that isn't Richmond now. You know what I mean? Like, it's gonna start getting, and they need to do this. We've talked to them about this before with their attorney, Andrew, whatever his last name is, that guy. But, yeah, but, it's, I can just see this coming, and I'm just thinking ahead of like what, we'd be talking about that if it was all residential. You know what I mean? We had the conversations about access and the other, you know, one side can walk to the other and all that kind of stuff. But we haven't had a conversation about commercial that way, is all I'm saying.
Right.
And I don't even know if there's one to be had. I'm just bringing it up, that's all.
Yeah, I mean, this property was zoned as C-Tech.
Yeah.
And that's why we're looking at it
Of course.
in the way that we are.
Should be, yeah.
Presumably, that's the way the
We need
town
this
would want
kind
us
of
to approach it.
Yep. Well, thank you.
Great.
And we're gonna continue this,
We're gonna
right? We need a
Continue
motion.
this, yes, we do need a motion. Nobody in the public, no one, everyone good? Okay.
So
So
we keep the public open.
keep the public open.
Yeah, I'm just gonna
Entertain a
continue.
motion to continue to
Yep.
the next meeting.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
All right, motion made by Nat, seconded by Joe. Nat,
Aye.
Joe,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
and I'm an aye as well.
This is a special permit, so you might want
Oh,
to let
Oh,
somebody else
activate.
vote on it too.
well, but we might have someone back and they can mull it in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we'll
So,
wait on that, but
yeah.
I mean, you got enough time here? I mean, you're probably gonna have to extend it.
Oh, well,
It doesn't matter.
Yeah,
we'll extend as necessary.
just based on what Sparks Avenue took.
We
like-
want to
That's
walk
what I was thinking.
out of here with approvals, and obviously, as long as we're working toward that,
Yeah.
we'll be
Great.
extending.
Yep, perfect.
All right, thanks.
Appreciate it, Arthur.
Good to see you.
All righty. Okay, other business, planning board meeting, July 15th. That is that Zoom or is that a hybrid?
July 15th is hybrid.
Hybrid, and the
Yep.
18th is Zoom if it
18th
needed to be.
Is if needed.
If needed.
But I just want to touch on your July 15th meeting.
Yeah.
I mean, hopefully you can get through all the articles and just kind of have a marathon meeting, but maybe not, who knows, maybe they won't take that long. But you have 4 short-term rental articles that will be first on your agenda in the order that they are printed in the warrant. And then we're going to move to the demolition delay bylaw because we have extra staff that are coming to talk about those. So I'd like for
Okay.
you all to be able to get through those that night.
Yeah.
And hopefully the rest of them if you can, but if not, Thursday, the 18th, 4 PM, that's Zoom only.
So at
and
the
then-
very least, you really want us to get through the demolition because you have Holly coming and,
Holly will probably be here, the building commissioner is going to
Okay.
be here.
perfect, great, we'll make it through at least that far.
They have time restrictions? If they have time restrictions, because I know Paul's got to come and go, do we want to move that up, or do you think we'll be fine?
I think it'll be fine because the building commissioner is going to be here for the short-term rental articles as well because
Okay.
his division will be enforcing those, so that's important for any feedback.
Thank you.
Great.
And then your regularly scheduled meeting is August 12th
So we're here?
here.
Perfect.
Right, Billy?
Okay.
Great. Other than that, staff, you guys are the absolute best.
Yes,
Thank
cheers.
you all. Couldn't do it without you.
Here comes Catherine.
And let's see who can get out of here before Catherine.
It's like the old
reads all the
days, Catherine.
signage. I'd entertain a motion.
Motion to close the meeting.
Let's adjourn.
Adjourn, you want adjourn? I'll give you the word adjourn.
I'll second that.
Motion made by Joe, seconded by Nat. Joe,
Aye.
Nat,
Aye.
Mr. Kitchener,
Aye.
good luck tomorrow, and I'm an aye as well.